When I got into a car accident, I spent 4 nights in the hospital alone. My parents never visited. Instead, my sister posted a photo online. Finally, some peace without him. I stayed silent. A week later, still sore and bandaged, I woke up to 41 missed calls and a message from Mom. Your sister's in trouble. We need you now. I just sat there, staring at the screen, and replied this. I, 32M, woke up on the 4th day in the hospital to the sound of a breakfast cart rattling past my door. The morphine drip had been reduced the night before, so the pain in my ribs was sharper now, more real. 3 fractured ribs, a concussion, lacerations across my left arm that required 18 stitches, and bruising that made my entire torso look like someone had used me as a punching bag. The other driver had run a red light doing 50 in a residential zone. I didn't remember the impact, just the sudden awareness of being upside down, then nothing, then fluorescent lights and EMT voices. My phone sat on the rolling table beside the bed. I checked it obsessively the first 2 days, then less on the 3rd, and by the 4th morning I'd stopped reaching for it entirely. The silence from my family was louder than any notification could have been. Mom hadn't called. Dad hadn't texted. My sister hadn't even bothered with a cursory "hope you're okay" message. The hospital had contacted them as my emergency contacts within an hour of my admission. They knew. They just didn't care enough to show up. I scrolled through social media while picking at rubbery scrambled eggs, more out of habit than interest. That's when I saw it. My sister had posted a photo the previous evening. Her and our parents at some upscale restaurant, all 3 of them grinning over cocktails and appetizers. The caption read, "Finally some peace without him. Best family dinner in months." The post had 63 likes. Several comments asked who him was. She'd responded to one with a laughing emoji and the words, "You know, the energy vampire." I stared at that screen until my eggs went cold. Something inside me that had been cracking for years finally split clean through. I didn't comment, didn't react, just took a screenshot and set the phone face down on the table. A nurse came in to check my vitals and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, which was the biggest lie I'd told in a long time. They discharged me on the 5th day with a bottle of painkillers, a list of follow-up appointments, and instructions to take it easy for at least 3 weeks. I took an Uber home to my apartment because I had no one to call for a ride. The driver helped me up the stairs with my belongings from the car, which the police had recovered from the wreckage. My laptop bag had survived. My gym bag hadn't. I tipped him $40 because he was the kindest person I'd interacted with in almost a week. My apartment felt different when I walked in. Smaller, quieter. I dropped my bags by the door and stood in the living room for a long moment, just breathing, feeling the ache in my ribs with each inhale. The bandages on my arm itched beneath my shirt. I needed a shower. I needed sleep. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life. Because one thing had become crystalline clear during those 4 nights alone. My family didn't love me. Maybe they never had. I'd always been the responsible one. The one who helped Dad move furniture when he threw out his back. The one who drove 3 hours each way to help my sister move into her new apartment last year. The one who covered Mom's car repair bill when she was short on cash, even though I was still paying off student loans. I'd convinced myself that family meant showing up, meant being reliable, meant putting them first. What I'd failed to recognize was that the arrangement was entirely one-sided. I was useful to them. I wasn't valued by them. The week after I got home was a strange kind of solitude. I worked remotely from my couch, moving as little as possible, healing in increments. Colleagues sent well wishes through Slack. My boss told me to take whatever time I needed. A friend from college who lived 2 states away called to check on me. Someone I hadn't spoken to in 8 months. But from my family, nothing. Not a single message asking if I'd made it home safely. Not one call to see if I needed anything. The silence was deliberate, and I finally accepted it for what it was. I was done. Completely, irrevocably done. I wasn't going to rage or confront or demand explanations. I was simply going to stop being available. Stop being the reliable one. Stop existing in their lives the way they'd already stopped existing in mine. It felt less like a decision and more like an acknowledgement of reality. On the 8th day after the accident, I woke up at 6 in the morning to my phone vibrating so violently it fell off the nightstand. I blinked at the ceiling, disoriented, pain radiating through my torso as I reached down to grab it. 41 missed calls. 17 from Mom. 15 from Dad. 9 from my sister. A cascade of text messages, each more frantic than the last. The most recent was from Mom, sent 4 minutes ago. Your sister's in trouble. We need you now. Call me immediately. I sat up slowly, every muscle protesting, and stared at that message. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I'd nearly died. I'd spent 4 nights in a hospital alone. She'd gone out for cocktails and let my sister post jokes about my absence. And now that they needed something, I was supposed to jump. I was supposed to answer. I was supposed to fix whatever disaster they'd created, because that's what I always did. I opened the message thread and typed, "I'm not available." 3 dots appeared immediately. Mom was waiting, phone in hand, expecting me to cave. The dots disappeared, then reappeared. A message came through. "This is serious. Your sister made a huge mistake. We need your help right now. Please." I read it twice. Then I typed, "I was in a car accident 8 days ago. I spent 4 nights in the hospital. You knew. You didn't come. You didn't call. You went out to dinner instead and posted about how peaceful it was without me. I'm done being the person you only remember exists when you need something. Whatever trouble she's in, she has 2 parents to help her. I'm not available. Don't contact me again." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I blocked all 3 of them. Blocked their numbers. Blocked them on every social media platform. Blocked their emails. My hands were shaking, adrenaline overriding the pain medication. I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never set a boundary I wasn't willing to immediately compromise on. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. My phone stayed quiet for about 10 minutes. Then my uncle's number lit up the screen. I let it ring out. He called again immediately. On the 3rd attempt, I answered, because my uncle had always been decent to me, and I was curious what story they'd fed him. He asked what was going on, said my mother had called him in hysterics claiming I was refusing to help my sister in a crisis. I told him the truth, calmly and without embellishment. The accident, the hospital stay, the social media post, the complete absence of contact until they needed something. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he asked if I was okay, actually okay, and if I needed anything. I told him I was healing, and I appreciated him asking, which made me the first person in my immediate family to do so. He said he understood why I'd blocked them, that he didn't blame me, and that if I needed anything at all to call him anytime. We hung up shortly after. The calls kept coming from other numbers. Aunts, cousins, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. My parents were clearly making the rounds, trying to find someone who could guilt me into responding. I didn't answer any of them. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and spent the rest of the day reading a book I'd been meaning to get to for months. Update 1. It's been 3 days since I blocked my family, and the situation has somehow escalated in ways I didn't anticipate. My uncle called again, this time with actual information about what happened with my sister, because apparently he did some digging after our conversation. Turns out my sister had gotten involved in some kind of multi-level marketing scheme and had convinced my parents to co-sign on a business loan for her. $50,000. She'd promised them it was a guaranteed return, that she'd be able to pay it back within 6 months. Instead, she'd blown through the money in 2 months. The MLM collapsed like they always do, and now the loan payments were coming due. My parents couldn't cover it. My sister definitely couldn't cover it. And they'd all collectively decided that I should be the one to bail them out. My uncle told me this not because he thought I should help, but because he thought I deserved to know what I was being harassed over. He also mentioned that my mother had been telling everyone I was being selfish and cruel, that family helps family, and that I was abandoning my sister in her darkest hour. The irony was apparently lost on her. I thanked him for the information and told him I had no intention of giving them a single dollar. He said he figured as much and that he'd already told my mother she was being ridiculous. I appreciated him more in that moment than I had in years. The calls from random family members slowed down after a few of them actually asked me for my side of the story. Word spread quickly that I'd been in a serious accident and that my family had blown me off completely. The narrative my mother was trying to build started crumbling. Some relatives reached out with genuine concern, asking about my recovery. Others just stopped calling entirely, probably uncomfortable with the whole mess. My parents' reputation in the extended family was taking a hit, and I felt absolutely no guilt about it. My sister tried a different approach. She created a new social media account and sent me a message through a platform I rarely used but hadn't thought to block. She said she was sorry that she didn't realize how badly I'd been hurt, that Mom had told her it was just a minor accident. She said the post had been a joke, that she didn't mean anything by it, that she was stressed about her own problems and wasn't thinking clearly. Then came the real ask. She begged me to loan her the money to cover the loan payments, promised she'd pay me back with interest, said she'd already learned her lesson and would never do something like this again. I didn't respond. I just blocked that account too. Her apology was as hollow as every other interaction we'd had for the past decade. She wasn't sorry I'd been hurt. She was sorry I wasn't available to fix her mistake. My days settled into a quiet routine. Work, physical therapy, healing. I started seeing a therapist, something I should have done years ago, and began unpacking exactly how dysfunctional my family dynamics had always been. Turns out being the designated problem solver in a family of people who create problems isn't a role I'd volunteered for. It's one that had been assigned to me since childhood. My therapist had a lot of thoughts about that. I also started reconnecting with friends I'd drifted away from over the years, people I'd deprioritized because family obligations had always taken precedence. It was strange and uncomfortable at first, admitting that I'd essentially let my family drain all my time and energy while giving nothing back. But those conversations were easier than I'd expected. Most people understood. Some had their own stories of setting boundaries with toxic relatives. I didn't feel alone anymore, which was new. Update 2. It's been 6 weeks since the accident and 3 weeks since I blocked my family. My ribs have healed enough that I can sleep on my side again. The stitches came out 2 weeks ago, leaving a jagged scar across my forearm that I've decided not to care about. I've been back in the office part-time, and life has started feeling normal again. Or maybe it's a new kind of normal that's actually better than what I had before. My uncle called yesterday with news. My parents had put their house up for sale. They were downsizing, moving into a smaller place to free up capital to handle my sister's debt. He said my mother was furious, blaming me for not helping, claiming that if I'd just loaned them the money, they wouldn't have to uproot their lives. My father hadn't said much apparently, which was typical. He'd always been conflict-averse to the point of uselessness. My uncle also mentioned that my sister had moved back in with them, which I found grimly amusing. The peace without me they'd celebrated was now permanently disrupted by the actual source of chaos in the family. He asked me again if I was doing okay, if I needed anything. I told him I was genuinely better than I'd been in years. I think he believed me. I found out through a mutual cousin that my sister had tried to start a GoFundMe to cover her debt, framing it as a small business emergency, and conveniently leaving out the part about the MLM scam and the co-signed loan. It raised $300 before someone in the extended family called her out publicly in the comments, explaining the real situation. She deleted it within hours. The secondhand embarrassment was almost enough to make me feel bad for her. Almost. My therapist and I have been working on why I feel guilty for enforcing boundaries, even when those boundaries are entirely reasonable. It's slow work, undoing 32 years of conditioning. But I'm getting better at recognizing when my instinct to help comes from genuine care versus from a place of fear or obligation. My family doesn't fall into the genuine care category anymore. Maybe they never did. I've also been dating someone I met through a friend, nothing serious yet, but it's nice. She knows about the accident and about my family situation, and her response was refreshingly straightforward. They sound awful, and I deserve better. It's strange how validating it is to hear someone say that without qualifiers or suggestions that I should try to make amends. Sometimes people are just bad for you, related or not. Update 3. 2 months after the accident, I got a letter in the mail. Physical mail, forwarded from my old apartment because I'd moved to a different part of the city to be closer to work. The envelope had my mother's handwriting on it. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. It was 6 pages, handwritten, and it was the most manipulative piece of writing I've ever encountered. She started with how hurt she was by my silence, how a mother's love is unconditional, and she couldn't understand why I was being so cold. She talked about how hard my childhood had been for her, single-income household for a few years after the divorce from my biological father, how she'd sacrificed everything for me and my sister. She brought up every time she'd helped me as a kid, as if I owed her a debt for basic parenting. Then she got to the point. They were going to lose the house if I didn't help, and it would be my fault. And how could I live with myself knowing I'd destroyed my family over pride? I read it twice, made myself a cup of coffee, And then I did something I'd never done before. I wrote back. My letter was 1 page. I outlined the facts, the accident, the hospital stay, their absence, the social media post, the loan situation, my sister's choices. I explained that I wasn't refusing to help out of pride, but because they demonstrated with perfect clarity that I only mattered to them when I was useful. I told her that unconditional love works both ways, and she'd failed to show me any love at all, conditional or otherwise, when I actually needed it. I said I hoped they figured out their financial situation, but that it wasn't my responsibility to fix the consequences of choices I'd played no part in making. I ended with a single sentence. I wish you well, but I'm done. I mailed it that afternoon and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of finality. My uncle told me a week later that my mother had called him crying after receiving my response, saying I'd written horrible, cruel things to her. He asked if I wanted to know what she'd said. I told him no. I didn't need to know. Her reaction wasn't my problem anymore. The extended family drama has mostly died down now. People have chosen sides, some supporting my parents, some supporting me, most just staying out of it entirely. I've made peace with the fact that some relationships are casualties of this decision. If someone thinks I'm wrong for refusing to bankrupt myself to fix my sister's scam debt, I don't need them in my life anyway. I've been thinking a lot about what family means. I used to think it meant obligation, loyalty regardless of behavior, showing up no matter what. Now I think it means mutual respect, genuine care, and reciprocity. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to mistreat you. Shared DNA doesn't obligate you to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. My life is smaller now in some ways. Quieter, but it's mine. I'm not constantly bracing for the next crisis I'll be expected to solve. I'm not checking my phone with dread, wondering what emergency will require my time or money or emotional labor this week. I'm just existing, healing, building something that actually feels sustainable. The scar on my arm has faded to a thin white line. The ribs don't hurt anymore unless I twist wrong. I still think about those 4 nights in the hospital sometimes, the specific quality of that loneliness. But I also think about the clarity it gave me. Sometimes you need to be completely alone to realize who's actually there for you. And sometimes the answer is no one from the place you expected it most. I'm okay with that now. More than okay. I'm free.